Hey everybody, how we doing? So this is my second attempt at Coast2Coast Pinball episode 126. We did the whole entire episode last night, and I scrapped the whole thing because new has come to light. So welcome, let's go. Welcome to Coast2Coast Pinball. My name is Nate Shivers. This is a podcast. It is a commentary, and I'm a man out of quarters. So since we last spoke, I flew to New York, went to a little party. Some things happened on the internet, on Pinside, and it seems like the pinball universe just blew up. And it's time to talk about it. And I think we can do that tonight. So I was really planning like a cute, fun intro of like me doing, welcome to the D-list, and I was gonna jump into some rant about fishtails and try and trick you to think I wasn't gonna to talk about the subject matter at hand. But I'm not gonna do that. I don't have the energy now. It's been a long week. So yeah, Dutch pinball, the Big Lebowski, right? Okay. So I recorded last night, and I think I put together a pretty good 46-minute straight rant, and I had to delete it because before I started, I had actually reached out to Phil at Dutch Pinball and told him I really wanted to chat with him before I did an episode based on the happenings concerning the Big Lebowski, his departure from Dutch Pinball, and the Pinside thread that has just blown apart. And I didn't think I was going to get a chance to. I thought Phil had sort of said his piece in the thread, and I went ahead and recorded. And I got a little off track during the show from where I really wanted to be. And I had to leave. I had to kind of cut it off a bit shorter than I wanted. So I planned on coming home last night and continuing the show. But I went to the Ryan Adams concert with Teresa, and I got home late. And on the way home, I got a text message from Switzerland, from Phil, asking if I was awake, if I was up. And we talked for quite a while last night, about an hour. And I will tell you this right up front, before I dive into the whole subject matter. There were no big bombshells from Phil that was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that made me stop and redo the episode. It wasn't really anything like that. I just feel like I owe it to all parties involved here, and all listeners, and all people who either have money or an interest or are just curious about this very big subject in our little hobby, to have the facts as straight as I can in my head, so that my opinions and my commentary are as informed as they can be. And this is sort of pushed that way out of fear of coming off like some of the stuff that's been posted in the thread on Pinside that I think you've probably all seen, that in just a few days is at over 1,800 posts in 3 days, I believe. One of the fastest growing Pinside posts I've ever seen. And I was really disappointed in some of the people in the community and the hobby. And I don't want to come off like I'm scolding or on a high horse, but it really bummed me out reading some of the nonsense and I think sort of wild speculation that was in that thread, going both ways, not one way or the other, but really just both ways. People that clearly don't know what they're talking about, putting together like conspiracy theories or just theories, and I didn't want to get on this show that I know people are going to listen to and do that. I wanted to sort of lay it out as fair as I can, and I do have opinions on the matter, so I won't hold back my opinions, but yeah, I wanted to make sure I had a clear head going in, and this will be better. I can tell you that. I hope to bring a special guest on the show a little bit later. I'm sort of waiting for contact from this person. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen tonight. It will in the future, I'm sure, but I'd like to have it as part of this episode because I think it's important. So let's jump into this. Let me give you a little full disclosure from Mr. Nate Shivers here. So I have had contact with Phil since Expo. All right? I met Phil at Expo. I had not met him before. I had emailed briefly with him, but that was the first time I met Phil in person, and we hit it off. I think Phil and I saw a lot of things very similarly. I had dinner with Phil at Expo. I think he wanted to pick my brain a little bit. I wanted to pick his brain a little bit, and we had a nice time. And I really enjoyed hanging out with him. I liked him. I was drawn to Phil, I think, for a lot of the same reasons many others were, because he's passionate about whatever it is that he's doing, and he brought an energy to the room. And I think that, that's probably as far as it really needs to be said about how I know Phil. Phil Weinberg's a good dude. Phil Weinberg's very, very sick with cancer right now, and it's unfortunate. And on that level, I really, really feel sorry for Phil. Barry and Yop, met them also at Expo. Emailed a little bit back and forth with Barry. Very nice guys. Obviously, they're from Holland. They're Dutch. They're the Dutch in Dutch pinball. They were the guys that started the company. Phil came on a little bit later, and I was absolutely flattered that Barry obviously said he'd listened to the show and knew the show, and that I've got an ego too. That makes me feel good when somebody from another country who's building a cool pinball machine says they know the show and the show. That's fun for me. But really nice guys. So I met Phil, Barry, and Yop all around the same time. And Barry invited me to the Dutch Pinball VIP party this past weekend in New York City. That party was born out of Dutch Pinball canceling off the Houston Arcade Expo. They were locked in to be there. They were going to bring the prototype Big Lebowski machines to Houston. They canceled when Phil left the company, resigned from the company. They canceled it in the wake of that, and they decided they wanted to do a make good for the U.S. market, where a lot of their games are going to be sold, where they're trying to, show off their work. And Barry actually texted me or emailed me, one or the other, before it was official and asked what I thought of doing the VIP party at Modern Pinball in New York City. I told him I thought it was a fantastic idea. He said he agreed. He was sort of already doing it, already on it, wanted to know if I would be able to come out. I confirmed that I would be able to come out. I really wanted to see the game again. I wanted to sort of pick Barry's brain. And I have not gotten a chance to have any of these guys on the show. Phil and I, months ago, had emailed back and forth about doing an interview. And he was very, very upfront saying, look, I hate to do the interview all by myself. I think, Barry and Yop need to be a part of it too, because they designed the game and are working on the manufacturing processes for the game. Why don't you email me some questions so that we don't have to deal with the language barrier? I think Phil and Barry and Yop would rather not, do an interview where the language could be an issue and might be misunderstood, or at least that's the vibe I got at the time. So I sent a bunch of questions to Phil that apparently got lost in the shuffle somewhere. I think somebody's spam filter caught them, and I never heard back. And so I sort of, at the time, honestly felt a tiny bit blown off by Dutch Pinball. Felt like they weren't really looking to promote the Big Lebowski at the time, which is fine. You don't have to come on my show. That's fine. I'm still going to talk about it if it's news in pinball. That's what I'm here for. But it didn't seem like they were really reaching out or trying to promote the game. So I laid way back on it. And if you were listening to the show before Expo, I was lukewarm on the Big Lebowski. I hadn't seen it in person yet. All we'd seen was the art, and I thought it was pretty, but I didn't really know the force that this company was going to bring to Expo. So we got to Expo, and then it was like a full court press. I think it's gone down pretty infamously now. The Expo seminar with Dutch Pinball, the room was packed. They rolled in the machines. They did the uncovering. You had Phil standing behind Barry and Yop very proudly, kind of saying, "Ta-da, here's our game." And it was a big moment in this modern surge of pinball to see that happen. Phil, as well documented, was the voice of Dutch Pinball at Chicago, at Expo. He was very confident. He was very outgoing. I even told him at dinner that night or the next night, I thought he came off very arrogant. And he kind of laughed when I said that, because I think he knows. He was trying to. I was part of it. He wanted to stand out. And I had no problem telling him that. And I said, I'm sure you ruffled some feathers. This pinball industry has a lot of history, a lot of legacy. And there's going to be some clashes, just personality-wise, with the new companies and the new names and people in pinball versus some of the legacy and the icons of pinball. And he went pretty much directly at Stern in his seminar, and I knew that would probably ruffle some feathers. Honestly, I didn't feel like afterwards there was a lot of ill will towards Dutch pinball. There was a few people who, coined the phrase "he's the marketing guy" and said some things like, "Oh, he dropped F-bombs," and I think as many people were enamored by it as were offended, if not way more. And look, they sold pinball machines based on prototypes. Pre-ordered out 6 months or more, they were selling $8,000 plus games based on their design, which I think is well documented as being a really strong effort in design of a pinball machine, based on the artwork, which also looks to be fantastic in the forms we've seen it in. Based on their marketing approach, which was something we had not seen really in pinball yet, with this sort of new age guerrilla marketing, no holds barred, girls in outfits and flyers and VIP parties and countdown websites. It was just really different and cool, and it was a shock to a lot of people to roll into Chicago and get to Expo and see not one, not two, but 3 flipping, running prototype games of the Big Lebowski. It blew me away. I did not expect that. And I came out of Expo obviously saying that they were the big winners of the show, because I think they were. And it was the culmination of a lot of hard design work on Barry's part. I know there's other people working on design, but in general, Barry's the head of the design. I think that Jaap had a lot to do with the business side of it and gearing up for manufacturing, because they have manufacturing goal dates set. And then you had Phil, who had sort of become the American part of the group, as we'll get into in a little bit, pushing forward on the marketing front and the hype front. And all those things kind of reached a point at Expo. And it was a big deal. And people, really came out excited. So I left Expo incredibly excited, thinking that, this company, and I still think this company is going to be a big player in pinball going forward. With perfect hindsight, and this is not me trying to say I know it all or anything like that, but with perfect hindsight, I can look back to Expo and I could see something as simple as the fact that during their big announcement, during their big launch of the Big Lebowski, Phil grabbed me and said, "Hey, let's go get dinner." And I didn't think much of it at the time, but now looking back, it's a little maybe strange that Phil wanted to sort of get out of the hotel suite in the room with the other guys and get away from everybody and go out with me, some dude with a podcast, and have dinner. Now, sure, I can see why he maybe wanted to pick my brain a little bit. I think maybe he thought I blew him off originally when he sent because he said he'd answered these questions and sent them back, and then I never did anything with it. So maybe he was trying to see why I was blowing them off. Whatever it was, the fact that I ended up, alone with 1/3 of the crew at this big moment might speak a little bit to the division that was occurring in Dutch pinball at the time. I have now sorted through it all and looked back at it all, and I've heard the story in pretty big detail from Phil, personally on a telephone call last night, from spending, I don't know, I think Barry and I hung out on and off for 8 hours, 9 hours, Saturday night in New York City at Modern Pinball. And I really enjoyed it. Jaap was not able to attend the New York VIP party. His mother passed away, so he had to not come, which, we total condolences sent out Jaap's way. I got to hang out with Scott from their team in the U.S., who's working on some design ideas and some programming mostly, I believe. Trying to keep all the facts as straight as I can. And there's stories of what happened and why we're at this point where we're at with this huge debacle happening around us. The stories, I think you would probably expect them to be really different. I think you would expect, a lot of he did this, and they did this, and they did this, and they're this. It's really not like that. I got to be honest with you. They're both basically telling the same story. And by they both, I really mean Barry and Phil, the two sides of it that I'm getting. It's just that they're seeing it from different angles and from different viewpoints, and they have different goals in mind now. And that has, I think, kind of really obviously created a giant rift between the two parties. So everything I say on this show tonight, I believe is cool with all parties involved. I wanted to make sure, and I asked Barry numerous times at Modern Pinball, please, if you tell me something here that you don't want me to say on the show, tell me. And he did that. He would talk about stuff that was maybe a little more inside or a little more detailed that isn't appropriate for a public forum, and he said, please don't bring this up on the show. And I definitely will not. And with Phil last night, I think he knew from the start of our phone call. We were on the record, and then we did get into a few other details again, really specific businessy things that, despite the fact that Phil has been very public in the last few days about his problems, there's a lot of things that I think he would not bring forward and has not brought forward, and asked me very, kindly, don't bring this forward. So there are some off-limit things, but mostly everything I heard from everybody is on the record. And I told everybody. I told Barry, I have talked to Phil, and I told Phil, and Phil knows I was with Barry, so everyone knows I'm in the middle of this, and hopefully I can be fair here. So Phil left Dutch Pinball, a month and a half ago, something like that. Whenever it was that he announced he left. And I immediately reached out to Phil and said, hey man, really bummed to hear that you left. What happened? And I did not get a reply. And I think actually all his reply was like, it was magical, dude. And that was pretty appropriate. And that statement alone, I think, shows you that Phil is very, very emotionally attached to this project and these people and the whole scenario. And I think we had one more brief conversation around the 5th of November. And he actually said, I might want to come on the show. I feel like I'm kind of getting rolled over here a little bit. Like, he didn't like the way it was kind of happening. So I, of course, said anytime. Oh, and all these guys have an open forum on Coast2Coast Pinball. So he left, and I didn't hear much. And then Barry reached out to me about the VIP party, said I'd love to come, love to talk, love to get you on the show. So I fly Saturday morning early. I take the direct flight from San Diego to JFK, and when I land in JFK, I didn't have Wi-Fi on the plane. I was sleeping mostly. I was tired. I turned my phone on, and oh my gosh, 17 emails, 34 Facebook notifications, and like a half a dozen text messages, lots of links to Pinside. I will tell that. So all of you listeners that sent me info, thank you. I appreciate it and keeping me on my game. I even had people saying, oh, this is going to get deleted. You need to see this. And I was asking multiple people, I'm like, copy and paste it all somewhere so I can read this. It actually has not been deleted. It's all out there for you to see, for better or for worse. So I actually, instead of going to get my rental car, I sat down in the American Airlines lounge, pulled out my iPad, and just started reading. And I sat there for about an hour and just read this thread. And in a nutshell, as you know, Phil went into a post about the Big Lebowski machine and started divulging his problems with the company. The thread was actually DP USA refund, still want the game. And it was a Pinsider in Virginia who had just gotten a refund from Phil for his pre-order, and PayPal issued him a refund. And he basically was saying, hey, I didn't request this refund. I still would like the game. Let me know what's going on. And then there was replies, yep, just got the same thing. And then Phil popped in and said, I am doing this because. And he listed his reasons and grievances. I do not want to spend this show going through all the all the stuff that's posted in Pinside. It's out there for you to see. I'll try and summarize it as best I can. I spoke with Phil at length, and I believe what he says. I believe that he's also maybe taking some of it differently than somebody else might. Like everyone takes certain situations differently. Sometimes something might offend someone that doesn't offend someone else. Sometimes someone takes a harder stance or a softer stance on something that someone else would not. I think there's definitely, his own unique take on some of these. But I think that you have to stop and understand some things about Phil Weinberg. Told you, Phil's not doing well. I talked to Phil last night. He sounded like hell. He was actually at the doctor's office while we were talking. And he's not feeling well. He's in for cancer treatments. The medicines and the treatments, kind of turn him into a zombie in a lot of ways. He says he sleeps about 20 hours a day once he goes through this stuff. He's probably scared to death that he's not going to make it through the next whatever months, years. Doesn't matter. He's 40 years old. He's young, and he has a family and 2 young children. So Phil is viewing the world and pinball and his friendship and partnership with Barry and Yop very differently than maybe I would right now. And I think Phil feels very trapped in a situation right now where he was into Dutch pinball and the Big Lebowski, 110%. I hate that saying because it's so silly. Anything over 100%, stop it. But it's one of those things where if you saw him at Expo and you've talked to Phil and met Phil, he was in. He was not just a marketing guy, but he really believed in this project, and he still does really believe in this project. And he was excited to be a part of it. Add to that he and Barry and he and Yop are all really good friends. You had a guy who was really, really passionate about this project. Really passionate. And sometimes when somebody's very, very passionate about something, little problems can get amplified. Or big problems can be maybe the end. And I think what happened was, and it's pretty much out there, and I can confirm what I kind of believe to be true, Phil was having disagreements with the way Dutch Pinball was approaching aspects of the Big Lebowski, whether it was licenses and when they were going to show licensed artwork, whether it was the way they handled their marketing efforts and who was exactly handling each part of the marketing, whether it was when to go to what shows and how to spend money on what shows. Phil wanted to have, a certain amount of say in that because he believed it. And smart people, if you've ever worked with really smart people, one thing about them is oftentimes really smart people believe that they're right, and that's how they succeed because they believe in themselves that they're right, and they will keep going until they prove themselves right. And I think at Dutch Pinball, you have 3 smart people who all believe that they're right, and they're all just going to keep going, doing it the way they want to do it because they all believe they're right. That will probably lead to success for most of these guys. I think these are all fairly successful guys in life in general. And I think Phil was getting outvoted. In fact, I know he was getting outvoted. He wasn't getting his way. And I think he couldn't handle that at a point. And whereas I might grit my teeth and bear it and, just deal with it as I might, Phil may not feel like he has that opportunity in time. And, going up against what he's going up against, if he saw things that he didn't feel were okay or feel were appropriate for running the business or how he wanted to move forward, I think that got amplified by his situation with his health, with his family, and he needed to leave. He had to get out, so he did. The problem here is that the way they had the company set up was, I would say, I don't want to use the word messy, but I guess it was just sort of pieced together because Barry and Yop own the Dutch Pinball that's based in Holland and that is going to build the machines. And they started Dutch Pinball USA to facilitate taking sales for the Dutch Pinball machine and then to ship games and get the money through a U.S. source. And Phil was an equal partner in the USA, but not the Dutch side of it. I think Phil wanted to be an equal partner in the Dutch side of it too, and he was not able to be. And I think Barry told me this. He was scared on letting another person in on the top level as an equal partner because Barry's extremely passionate about this too. A lot of this company was born out of Barry being in love with pinball and wanting to design great pinball games. So the thought, I think, of Barry that if I bring in a third partner, I can get outvoted and maybe someday forced out of my own company, because that happens in the business world. You know, the guy with the original idea hires partners in or takes shareholders in and then gets ousted someday. That can happen. And Barry admitted to me that that's like his worst nightmare, that maybe he brings Phil in and then Phil and Yop team up someday against Barry, and Barry's no longer there. So for whatever exact reason, Phil was not going to be one of the three main partners in the Dutch side of things. So Phil left, but when he resigned or quit, it's not that clean, because he's a three-way owner in the U.S., where that money is all sitting in a PayPal account that Phil's personal Social Security number and personal, in his opinion, credit standing, and I just don't know all the legalities and all the ins and outs of this, so I'm only going on what I've heard here, all tied to that. The fact of it is, Phil believes he's on the hook for all the money that's been put into the USA PayPal. So he wants out. He wants to sign it all over. Barry has told me that it's not that easy for him, that he needs to get a USA, I think, EIN number or something like that, a taxpayer number of some sort. And I think that the idea of Phil just stepping away is not a good thing for them, as far as losing their USA contact person, their point person, and they don't want that. Now, the feeling I get is, as Phil has gone on to Pinside and released all this information and painted the picture of what's going on and why he wants to tell a story, I think that Barry and Yop have become less inclined to just make a clean break, because now they feel that Phil is damaging the company, so he's going to have to stick with him and figure this out and work it out. That is the vibe I'm getting. So let's address Phil and Pinside. All right. I don't like the way Phil approached this. I told him that last night. Said I don't like that. I would never do that. I also don't have cancer. I don't have 2 children and a wife. And I'm not in this situation. So I can sit here and say I wouldn't do that. I don't believe I'd do that. I try not to do things in a public forum quite like that. I told him that. He gets it. And he did it. It's his makeup. It's the same guy that got up on stage at Chicago Expo in front of a room full of heavy hitters in the industry, all strangers to him, and dropped a bunch of F-bombs and said, we're here to, take over, et cetera, et cetera. That's how he rolls. That's how he did it. So he did it. And it went on and on and on. And the fire was fueled and flamed by a lot of Pinsiders. Some of the Pinsiders on here drove me a little crazy, because there's clearly people who just want to hear themselves or see themselves type something over and over again. I have no problem with anybody having an opinion. This whole show is just an opinion. It's just me talking. And if Pinside's where you put your opinions out, awesome. But really, at some point, we got it. We hear what you're trying to say. We see that you're completely biased either this way or this way, and nothing anybody says is going to sway that opinion. Got it. I had to laugh at some people who were like, yeah, I'm out on this because of all this. Well, you were never in on this because you didn't have any money on it. There were people in this thread that never had $1 into the Big Lebowski who just continually posted about how, I got out of this. I bailed on this. And it was pretty funny being at Modern Pinball, seeing some of those people say that, and literally Barry looked up and goes, he never sent us money. He was not in on this. It's just people want to be a part of it, I guess. And this was such a crazy, hyped up thing. You had people just really wanting to be in on it. And I stayed out of it. I didn't want to touch that thread with a 10-foot pole, because I didn't know both sides of the story. I didn't really know what's going on. I didn't understand all the business side of it, and I want to make sure I knew what I was talking about. So I told Phil straight out, I don't really like your approach. I think that the best move for Phil right now would be to stop. And he told me that wasn't going to be a problem, because the treatments he was about to go through were going to probably stop him for quite a while, because he's not going to be feeling well. And that sucks, and I do feel bad for him on that. I think that also, that pressure of this mounting health and medical issues built up on him, and he knew that that was happening today. So this last 3 days was sort of his, this is my go time. This is my time to get my word out. Here we go. That being said, I think he believes everything he's saying. I at no point feel like Phil is out there lying or telling mistruths. I don't know if he's, shading things a little more his way. I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't get that feeling, but I do get the feeling that some of the things that he's really focused on, that he took great offense to, that went down between him and Barry and Yop, probably if he was in a better health situation and in a less stressful situation, would probably roll off his back. But in the current situation, in the current scenario, it became a very big issue to him, and those are the things that pushed him out of the company. So anyway, I got to Modern Pinball on Saturday night about 5 o'clock, and Barry and Scott and Gavin and Mr. Burning Man, who I only have nice things to say about because he bought me pizza. But no, really good dude. That we had a crew in the back of Modern Pinball with laptops open and heads sort of just shaking. It was weird. In my head, I was flying to New York City to do this awesome interview with Barry and Yop. It's going to be great. We're going to get all this audio. We're gonna play pinball against each other. We're going to talk about the game. We're going to look at it closely. We're going to talk about the Phil situation and try and lay that to rest. And I walked into the weirdest day of my pinball reporting days. Yeah, they were watching the thread for sure. Of course they were. Why wouldn't they be? They were actually continually the whole time, and it was just, oh my gosh. So let's clear up something for Pinside. If you're listening and you're on Pinside, I want you to hear me very, very clearly. There's two clocks in the world. Time runs at two different speeds in the world. There's internet forum time, and then there's the rest of the free world time. Internet forum time moves really, really fast, and the clock just flies around. The hand just goes all the way around the clock really fast. Real world time often doesn't move anywhere near that fast. So all of this, I expect a reply by the end of the day. It's been 24 hours. Rah, rah, rah. Stop it. The real world doesn't work that way. Oftentimes, it's better not to respond. And I respect someone much, much more who stops, doesn't just type the first thing that's on his mind, and thinks about what he's going to say, and thinks about why he's saying it. Am I saying this to be reactionary? Am I being defensive? Am I trying to make it better? Am I trying to make it worse? Am I trying to incite people to like me or hate me or just rile them up? What am I doing here? Why am I writing this? And to Dutch Pinball's credit, Barry and Scott were all working on responses literally the whole afternoon and evening. They sent one out fairly quickly, I believe, a VIP letter, and they were kind of working on the next one as they went, but more stuff kept coming out, and Phil was posting more things. And I think at some point you have to just stop and let it happen before you respond. Because if you don't, you start getting into the situation where, I responded to that, but I haven't responded to that, and I need to keep going. So anybody who thinks Dutch Pinball and Barry, because like we said, Yop wasn't in New York. He was at the funeral for his mother. Anybody thinks Barry was in New York City having a big party and raising up the fun with all the drunk Santas in New York City for the Santa Crawl, think again. Barry was really bummed out. Barry was sitting in a chair in the back of Modern Pinball, staring at Pinside, staring at his email account, which he showed me at one point that had 107 unanswered, unlooked at emails. He had been opening emails until I got there, and then when we started talking, it started piling up on him. 107. So if you didn't get an immediate reply from Barry, I can tell you it's because there was a lot of email there to go through and look through. They were working on replies. They scrapped a couple things because it started to become clear they needed another plan, a longer plan. They worked on it. I felt really bad for Barry in this moment because he regards Phil as a very good friend. He talked about knowing Phil's wife, meeting his kids. They've worked together in the past, and this was really disheartening for Barry. And I don't think Barry realized how bad Phil's health is. I don't think anybody did. Phil's a proud guy who doesn't want to just dwell on his health being bad. And because I know that because I've talked to Barry via text today about how bad Phil kind of sounded and seemed last night. And Barry immediately said, I hate to hear that. I didn't know his health was that bad. So this is not a bunch of guys who hate each other. This is a bunch of guys who are friends who are having a giant business disagreement that's now out on Pinside and that everybody gets to be witness to. And it sucks. Because these things happen in business all the time. This is not some amazing, crazy thing that, oh, I can't believe this happened. I have witnessed these things happen at the companies I've worked at. I've witnessed stuff way crazier than this. Way more scandalous. Way more like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. Like beyond any of this. This is small beans. Now, I understand it's not small beans to you if you have $4,500 or $8,000 sitting in a PayPal account that you seemingly can't get your money back out of. I get that. We'll address that. But what's going on here, it's big for our little hobby, but it's really not that big in the world of business. And what I saw more than anything, watching Barry, talking to Phil, was guys who are really passionate about what they're doing, and they're at an impasse, and they're both stubborn to a degree, and it's unfortunate, and it sucked. So Barry had to tear himself away from all the emails because he was trying to read the emails from everybody, and he had to tear himself away to go back out into the VIP party. Because remember, there was also 60 people out in Modern Pinball with VIP tags around their necks, playing the Big Lebowski, waiting to meet Barry, shake his hand, and talk about the pinball machine. Talk about bittersweet, right? Barry did not fly back the next day. A lot of people think he was just back out on a plane on Sunday. His ticket was actually back on Monday morning. He had some business stuff and some personal things he needed to do in New York City Sunday. So he flew up Monday. And as far as I can tell by reading Pinside and talking to a few people who've emailed me directly, he's replying to most emails by now. So he has, in the last few days, been able to get back on Dutch time and situate himself and start digging into the customers, which is, I think, at the end of the day, one of the most important aspects of this entire story. So I spent that evening hanging out at Modern Pinball. I just as an aside, I had a great time. It was a lot of fun. I hung out with Barry, obviously, with Gavin and Scott, and Scott's really, really nice wife, whose name is just blanked out in my head right now. So, sorry. Great girl. We bought cookies. It was a lot of fun. Steve Bowden, Fun with Bonus, was there. I met some other listeners of the show. I met Lee. I met other people whose name I can't remember right now. Sorry. It's a little bit of a fog. I stayed up 48 hours straight. I literally flew there, went to the party. At 2 in the morning when Modern Pinball closed, Steve Bowden and I went across the street, had a late-night dinner at the diner, talked all about pinball, tournament pinball, Papa, Replay FX, all this stuff. It was awesome. Had a great time hanging out with Steve. I drove to the airport. I cleaned myself up in the lounge at the airport, and then I flew home. And I slept little bits on the flight all day long back. And then I stayed up the rest of that day and was exhausted. So it was a very weird couple days. But the party itself was fun. Modern Pinball's great. I got to chat with Steve Epstein, Steve Zoller extensively, Al, Pinaholic. Just a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun. It was good times. And I really have tried to kind of sort my thoughts out about the game, about the people in on the game, about the people not in on the game, about Barry and Yop, about Phil, about Dutch Pinball. And it's unfortunate because this company kind of came out of nowhere and created this really big, exciting event, the Big Lebowski pinball launch. It was a game that had been rumored and wanted and talked about, and they were bringing it to you. And not only are they bringing it to you, what they brought you to show you was awesome. And I will tell you this. If you want the Big Lebowski pinball machine, you will be able to get the Big Lebowski pinball machine. I mean, I can't say anything 100% for sure. I have there's nothing that I've seen makes me think this game isn't going to get built. Nothing. All the people who are putting pictures of explosions on the Big Lebowski and this game will never get built. Yeah, I guess that sounds all neat and cool when you type it on Pinside and you get to be the guy who said, "Oh, I told you, it's just like Vonnie D." You're wrong. That is actually not. It's nothing like that. This is not that. This is a really tough time for them as a business. But let me tell you this: the game's still awesome. And when you have a game that's that awesome, it's worth a lot of money. So if they take no more pre-orders and they refund a ton of pre-order money, they still have a game that's worth a lot of money, and they will build this game. They're incredibly detailed as far as how this game's going to get built. And I know that a lot of you are saying, dude, no, this company's a mess. I think that you have to understand there are some cultural differences between how the Dutch do business and how Americans do business. And I also think that it's very easy to sit up on a high horse and say, if I ran business, I can't run my business so haphazardly. I can't do this. I can't do that. You know what? These are pinball fans who were all friends, and you know what? Opening up a PayPal account in the U.S. under one of their social security numbers probably didn't even phase any of them at the time because, hey, we all have the common goal. We're all in this for pinball. We have a product we think is going to be awesome that we can probably make profitable. Yeah, of course I'm going to go. I'm going to put my own money into it. These guys have a lot of money of their own into this project. There was no pre-order money into this game when you saw the prototypes, folks. None. They did that on their own. Do you think that was cheap? Because it wasn't. So trying to compare Dutch pinball to some Kickstarter project is short-sighted, ignorant, and not fair, really. I think that's actually just, it kind of makes you look silly. And I guess you don't care because no one will go back and find your post in 6-8 months whenever these games actually come out. And I don't know the timeline. I know that they have the ability to go into production by April. I don't know that they'll be able to based on some of the things happening now and sorting out some of the business. I don't know that there's going to be any delay either, though. Talking to Barry, they are going to build this game in 2015. It's happening. I like the game a lot. I think a lot of people are going to like this game a lot. I really feel bad for the people who sent money in and now are in this weird limbo, and they're getting scared by some of the stuff they're reading on Pinside that their money's gone. And I know there's some Pinsiders who have, and not just, I know there's some Big Lebowski early adopters and prepayers and pre-order folks that want to get their money back right now for various reasons. Some people are just spooked and want their money back because they feel uneasy. Fine. They're going to get your money back. They have to sort out this USA PayPal thing. I don't have an answer for that. I don't know that they do either. They're working on that. There was no locked-in moment. There was always refunds available. They have to, I feel sorry for those people. Excuse me. I know there's people who want their money back because personal things have come up. And I will tell you one thing that Phil told me when I asked Phil. I asked Phil real frankly, what would happen if you just walked away from all this? If you just literally turned your phone off, turned your computer off. He's in Switzerland, not a bad place to disappear, and just said forget it. Because Phil said he doesn't want any of his money back. He's put money into the company. He said, I don't want it. I just want out. He wants out of the company, wants to get away from it, doesn't want the stress, doesn't want the pressure. I asked him, I said, what would happen if you just walked away? And he surprised me because the first thing he said is he named one of the people who has money into the project. He said, I can't do that because so-and-so, and I won't name that person here. It's somebody I think most of you listening probably would know. He said, so-and-so needs to get their money back. And I feel like if I were to just turn it off and walk away, I'd sort of be turning my back on this person. And then he named 2 other people. And he said, so if for nothing else, I would have trouble sleeping at night knowing I did that. Surprising. And I believed him. I thought that was honest. I actually asked Barry the same question today. I said, what happens if Phil just leaves? If he just does nothing, walks away from it? And I actually led the question a little bit. I said, would PayPal just start sending money back? Because I think that may be what would happen, possibly. I don't know. And Barry said, we're not sure. We hope that that's not what happens. So I guess what I'm trying to say, and I've said this to a few folks who've emailed me directly or messaged me through Facebook and said, what should I be doing? I have money tied up in this. I believe, and I hope I'm not proven wrong here, and I don't think I will be. I believe you're safe. I believe your money's safe. I don't know how the mechanics of it all are going to happen. I don't know that, if there's been money moved around for the company, which, guys, honestly, that's pretty common. And I know that this is a really weird case where Dutch Pinball is split up into sort of 3 different groups because the Bride of Pinbot thing is sort of its own separate thing with Barry, and then there's Dutch Pinball that's like Dutch Pinball, and then there's Dutch Pinball USA. But I think this sort of thing probably happens all the time with money getting moved around, and you just aren't usually hearing about it. But I guess what I'm trying to say is I think you're fine. I really do believe the game's going to get made. Anybody that has money in it will be safe. But would I tell you that you should go run and throw money at it right now? Well, no. For the same reason I haven't put any money into it. Because I'll be really honest with you. I want this game. I want a Big Lebowski. Played it again. Really enjoyed it. Want the game. I personally don't feel the rush myself to tie my money up. And I think if you listen to the show, I started with Medieval Madness Remakes. I was really excited about a brand new unboxed Medieval Madness. Then it hit me, man, that's going to be a year. I don't want my money tied up for a year. I want to be liquid. I want to be able to go buy the deal that happens down the street. I only have so much expendable cash I can put towards pinball machines. I want to be able to travel and go see shows. And if I have all my money tied up and stuff, maybe I can't do that. So I've always sort of been of the mindset, wait until you have to. Now, America's Most Haunted that I bought, I had to. It was sort of a, hey, they're only going to sell so many of these, and it's a great deal, quite frankly. I think the game's a fantastic value. And also, I wanted to get one early for this show. I think, I think helping Spooky Pinball is part of my motivation. Which leads me to why I feel bad for anybody that did pre-order, because pre-ordering pinball machines is a bit of a leap of faith. If you think otherwise, you're kidding yourself. You don't know any of these companies really more than what they've shown you. Stern Pinball, okay, that's one thing. Jersey Jack Pinball at this point, I think they're building their track record. Maybe a slow track record, but it's a track record. That's one thing. Spooky Pinball, certainly building a track record. They're shipping the games that they've sold. Anybody else, and even for that matter, Spooky Pinball and Jersey Jack on future games, you don't really know where they're going to be. And pre-ordering something is risky in and of itself, because if a company folds and bankrupts itself, there's nobody to go after. And if that company, even if you do go after that company and there's any money left over when they shut the company down, if they have bills and outstanding debts, you're probably not first in line with your pre-order. I think that's been well documented. So I feel bad because there are people who this might be the wake-up call for them that, hey, when I'm sending thousands of dollars to a company that I don't really, really know, based on maybe drawings. I know people have already put money into Alien, right? I haven't even seen a game, and they've put money into Alien. Based on drawings, based on working prototypes. I think at that point you have to know buyer beware a little bit, right? However, I'm going to defend the pre-order model here. Even though I don't love it, I'm going to defend it for this reason. I want innovation. I want exciting new games. I want the next great pinball company to come forward. I don't know how easy in the current state of the hobby, in the current state of money in the economy, it's going to be for a company to do it the old-fashioned way, quote-unquote, by, purely, living on ramen noodles and starting with nothing and build games and hopefully sell them. Just because the economy of it all, the scale of the economics behind it, are really tough. Pinball machines are hard to build. You need money and capital to build a machine. And I want to see more machines. I want to see the next great pinball company. And crowdsourcing and crowdfunding and pre-orders are a tool to get there. I would encourage anybody who is taking part in these types of deals, though, to be very clear on what you're getting yourself into. You're betting on a company. You're betting on a game. You are, I don't want to use the word gambling, but you're certainly betting in a way. You're saying that I believe this group of people can deliver me that product. Your recourse is going to be tough if you're putting money into a company and not a person. Even then, it's going to be tough. Somebody bankrupts himself, they owe you money? What now? That's the reality of it. The only way you can be sure you're getting your game is to go in somewhere or call up a warehouse that has a game in a box and buy that box. I sent Spooky Pinball half of my America's Most Haunted money months and months ago, because I felt it was a good bet. I knew their story. I knew where their parts were coming from. I knew who designed their game. I knew their plan to build the game. And I asked all those questions. I sat there at the Midwest Gaming Classic and asked Charlie, how are you going to build this thing? Because in my head, I'm sitting there thinking, building pinball machines is hard. I should trademark that because Pinsight's going to rip it off. Building pinball machines is hard. No, I'm just kidding. But he had all the answers. He had a plan. He knew how it was going to happen. And I left Midwest Gaming Classic like, I'm buying that game. I am buying that game because I knew they were going to build it. In my heart of hearts, I knew they were going to build it. Is it possible they could have hit stumbling blocks and maybe Ben Heck got mad at them and sued them and they had a big blow up and games never got built? Sure, that's absolutely possible. And my pre-order money, gone. Didn't happen. I survived. But it's not something I want to keep doing with my money personally. To those of you who are in the pre-order game, who pre-order everything, who want to be a part of it, thank you. Thank you. Be careful, but thank you for helping move the hobby forward. I get a little annoyed at some of the people on some Pinside threads who say it's bad business to do crowdsourcing and crowdfunding and Kickstarters and pre-orders. It's bad business. It says who? Who are you to judge what's good or bad business? It's really no different than a public company making a bunch of business decisions and then failing miserably and costing all their shareholders the money, right? I mean, on some level, maybe it's higher risk. People take out government-funded loans for things all the time and fail. And guess who that falls back on? All of us that paid our taxes to that. So it's a different business model for sure. And it may not suit some people because I can tell you, talking to the guys out there building machines, talking to Charlie, talking to Barry, talking to Phil, talking to people who've taken pre-order money, talking to Jersey Jack, it's stressful. I guarantee you, every single pinball manufacturer, every single one of them, if they could have it their way, they would love to just build the games, have supply, and sell their game. No pre-orders. They would much, much prefer that because you can take longer if you like or need it. Hey, no problem. Nobody's sent me money yet. I don't have to do anything. I don't owe you anything. They can change the game as much as they want. Hey, man, don't buy it. The problem is now a lot of people say, hey, why'd you change it? And the manufacturer says, because we wanted to or had to. Yeah, but that's not what I paid you for. That's tough. That is really tough. So I kind of say thank you to those that are pre-ordering just because I selfishly want to see games. I would also say, don't pre-order if you can't afford it. If it's if it's going to break you or really put hardship on your life, A, probably isn't because it's a pinball machine we're talking about here. But B, don't do it. Wait, games will be out there. Games will be out there. All right, so it may not seem like it, but there was a little pause there in the show, and it was actually about a 4-hour pause because I did get contacted by Mr. Roger Sharp, and we had a phone conversation, and we did an entire interview episode, which will be following this episode, which is episode 127 of Coast2Coast Pinball. You've probably seen, I'll post them both at the same time tonight, so you'll probably see them both there. But just to quickly wrap up this episode 126, which is mainly my kind of take on the whole situation, and after talking to Roger for episode 127 here in the last little bit, I think I can stand firmer even than I was before in saying this game will get built, and listen to what he has to say about the licensing. His thoughts on his initial outreach to Universal. I think most of you who are worried about the game and the intellectual property and what the game's going to be like can rest easy. I think some of these ideas that they were going to lose the license over some of the things that have happened recently can probably be put to bed now. So I really I'll just let you guys hear 127. But anyway, so that's episode 126. We'll talk about this more as it develops and goes on. I hope that I have laid out pretty much the basics. I am still forming opinions, quite honestly, but I've tried to give you as honest and as fair and balanced as a take. And if I ever say the term fair and balanced again, I quit. I will quit this show if I ever use that term again. Ever use that term again. However, sorry. I think that I got the show out that I wanted to get out. So that's what I'm trying to say. So I am very excited for you to listen to episode 127. It was a lot of fun. I know you're listening to 126, and I'm talking about the next episode. I had a great night tonight. It was a lot of fun. So thank you very much for listening. Definitely check out episode 127 with Roger Sharp, and we'll talk to you again soon. Thanks.